welcome to Talking Cars. I'm Jennifer Stockberger.
I'm Mike Quincy.
And I'm Alex Nizik.
So as you can see, or maybe you can hear, we are coming to you today from the New York International Auto Show. So this is kind of a win-win, because not only has the auto show not happened in a couple of years, we certainly have not been standing next to each other in the last couple of years. So we are super happy to be here. It's great to be kind of back to some level of normalcy, but there's a little bit of a different vibe to this auto show than in years past. Mike, can you elaborate a little bit on kind of what we're seeing and what the differences are?
Well, we're seeing a lot fewer people.
Yes, for one.
A lot fewer journalists are clearly here. It's not as packed as it usually is. But I think you're seeing the automakers really doubling down on EVs. I mean, electricity seems to be obviously the future. And every car company is definitely making efforts to make sure that their voice is being heard when it comes to producing electric vehicles.
Right. The other thing too is there's fewer car companies. So we were saying, Honda, Mazda, BMW, they're not here. They have chosen not to attend.
Yep.
But that has left some room, Alex, for some other things.
Yeah.
There's more space on the floor.
Absolutely.
If that's the right word.
A couple things we noticed. So there's this new manufacturer that kind of seemed to just kind of come out of nowhere a little bit, Vinfast, and I'm not sure if other people have heard about it before the show today. I was certainly not that familiar, but they're a company based in Vietnam that's hoping to sell electric vehicles here by the end of 2022. And they actually showed up with not just concept cars, but what appears to be real vehicles.
Yes.
And, in years past, a manufacturer like that might have just been tucked away in a corner somewhere on the bottom floor. We got a couple floors here. But they're taking up a significant amount of space right on the center stage, right in the main floor of the show.
Well, you got to think that with fewer manufacturers showing up, the organizers of the show, we got to fill the space.
Absolutely.
And so maybe they said to these guys, listen, we're going to give you cut rate,
great deal,
space on some primo property.
Right.
There's also been in years past, and it's here right now, is this Jeep driving experience outside of the Javits Center here in New York. This year, all these EVs, I can remember bringing in cars in the past, and you had to lower the amount of fuel in for safety reasons. There's a lot of EVs on that floor, and what they've done is you can drive them. There's all these indoor driving experiences, and we've all said, some of these cars, if you haven't been in them yet, you need to try them. So it's a great opportunity. The public days are coming. Over this next coming weekend, and if you can get into some of these EVs, or people can get into them and get a sense of, oh my gosh, it's kind of a great car. It's a really good.
And it's super eerie because you don't normally see cars driving around the auto show floor, and you're hearing nothing. You're hearing nothing but a few little tire squeaks here and there.
The Ford F-150 Lightning's launching on that side of the room, and then you have like 6 EV or Hyundai Ioniq 5s ripping around this track on the other side of the room, and things in between. So it's definitely a totally different experience.
You didn't typically have moving cars.
The most unusual auto show I think we've been to so far.
Yes. The other thing that we noticed, and just to touch on it briefly, is a lot of EVs, but on the other side, which is kind of a bit of a dichotomy, is performance vehicles. So if it's not an EV on this pedestal, it's what, Mike, on this other pedestal?
Well, it's like you've got all these these green initiatives that are the automakers are taking on, but you also have a Bronco Raptor, which is not necessarily a V8, but it's super high horsepower. You've got the thunderous V8s like the Wrangler 392, the Challenger, the Mach 1,
Chevrolet ZR2, Silverado,
the Corvette,
Z06,
and the Lexus IS 500.
Right.
So we've got the buzz is about electric vehicles, but the automakers certainly are not giving up on internal combustion.
No, there's either performance or EV. So I thought. So, talking about some specific vehicles. So what kind of got you? What were your words? What got you jazzed, Alex? What did you text? Which car did you take a picture of and text?
A couple, but the first one that before anything else was actually that Z06 that you said. I sent a picture of that to my dad because myself included, but just kind of diehard Corvette fans, and that Z06 is getting the Corvette as close to the budget Ferrari that I think Corvette has always wanted to be, or a budget supercar in general, with that flat plain V8 and just that thing looks great.
Because what the regular Corvette needs is
more power.
More horsepower.
It wasn't
I was just going to say,
no, it's crazy.
I can't imagine, and I'm sure we'll get an opportunity to drive
I hope so. I really hope so.
And Mike, did you text anything to anybody?
I posted, and I did text a few, but one of the things that really I loved is the Toyota Tacozilla.
Yes, yes.
I mean, listen,
you got to explain what that is. What is the Tacozilla?
A Tacozilla is a kind of a one-off RV that Toyota put on top of a Tacoma pickup truck.
Yep.
And the colors have this kind of 70s vibe to it. It's very well proportioned, which is what I really liked about it. It looks perfect, enough space for two people. Yeah. And this particular one on the floor actually has a manual transmission.
No way.
Oh,
I didn't know that.
I didn't look at that. I was looking at the camper part.
Yeah.
I loved it as much as just on the outside, but then when I saw the transmission, I was like, holy cow! That to me that was it.
Yeah.
Did they let you tour the actual camper part? Did you get to go inside?
No, it was all roped off. I took a bunch
bad.
of pictures. I posted on Facebook.
Yeah.
And I said, I know it's Thursday, but it should be Taco Tuesday.
Oh, gosh.
Nice.
Now, I too texted that because I have a nephew who drives a Tacoma, but I also texted to my daughter the Bronco Raptor.
Yeah.
She loves the new Bronco and would like to get one at some point when I tell her you got to wait till the craziness settles down in the automobile market.
Yep.
But it's like this burnt orange, rugged all-terrain tires. It's just kind of a very cool looking car.
But
So
it's kind of weird because we mentioned the V8 Wrangler, and we've got this high horsepower Bronco. Can you think of another vehicle that you really don't want to go fast in?
No, that's right.
Yeah, that might get a little squirrely.
I mean, the Z06 that you mentioned is like this far off the ground.
Yeah.
Right.
These other ones are,
Yeah, with 37-inch tires on both. They're basically small monster trucks that you can just go and buy right off the floor.
Right. So let's talk about some of the new and individual vehicles that we're seeing kind of for the first time. So the first one, Silverado EV. Mike, give us some details about what we're seeing there.
Well, I mean, not only the enormity of the announcement of an all-electric pickup truck, but the physical enormity of this truck. It's huge. It weighs, I don't know how many tons. I mean, it is a massive vehicle. 0 to 60 in like 4.5 seconds. So it's super fast also, and they're talking about how much it's going to tow and how much it's going to haul. And it seems like General Motors is saying, yeah, we know what Rivian is doing. We know, Ford with the Lightning. Tesla's, talking about the Cybertruck for I don't know how many years. We're not missing out on this. The future pickups, probably has a lot of, EV-ness to it. I mean, it looks pretty impressive, but boy, is it big.
It's huge.
And the other thing I saw for the first time, 400-mile range for the Silverado.
That's impressive.
This show floor was the first time I was seeing 400s, so which I thought was important, and some of that cab flexibility that I love. I talk about the camper boat thing, so kind of following the Avalanche, and it's got that. I don't care for
the mid-gate.
The mid-gate idea, the bed extension, a lot of that flexibility that the Avalanche had, but I don't like the sail wing onto the. But
it gives it a weird look.
But it reminds me of the last Avalanche.
Certainly.
That's a truck I really liked.
Yeah, I love just not that look. But that's just me.
One thing that struck me with the Silverado is that GM is taking this ground up, fully new approach with the Silverado. It's not, even though it's sharing a name with the existing Silverado, nothing is similar, right? As opposed to the Lightning, one booth over, where that's basically a modified F-150. So two different approaches, one a little more conservative maybe than the other. See how it plays out.
See how it plays out, in reliability in particular, from the ground up. But anyway, so the other thing that got some buzz was the Buzz, the Volkswagen ID Buzz. And again, go back to the Silverado, sale 2024, ID Buzz on sale 2024. So these are early. But Alex, tell us a little bit about the Buzz.
Seeing them super early.
I
think we've been seeing concepts for the microbus or ID Buzz now since
20 years?
Yeah, 2001. I checked ahead of time, and they showed a microbus concept in 2001 that doesn't really look anything like this, but they've been teasing this idea of reviving the little bus for so long now. So it's cool to actually see it in the flesh.
Again, another Mike Quincyism. Futuristic nostalgia. That was his word.
It is. I mean, it gives you that kind of retro vibe, but another one where you see it in pictures and it looks a certain way, but then you get up close and personal with it, and it's, for me, the roof was way taller than I thought. It's just generally larger and boxier than I thought it was going to be. And from a design perspective, it has these, I'm calling them A-plus pillars. You have regular A pillar, and then ahead of that, you have another pillar going down in this really large wraparound windshield that's like really close to the front of the vehicle. So that driving position and that feel from inside the cabin is going to be very unique, and
I
we'll
think
see how.
nice. Visibility is going to be nice.
Most likely.
But
yeah.
aerodynamics, that's a brick.
It kind of looks like it, doesn't it?
Indeed.
Yeah.
And a lot of underpinnings from an electricals platform with the ID4.
Yes, very similar
with
underneath.
the ID4.
And as well as inside with the controls, which we are a little shaky on, so we'll see. Maybe they've made some improvements.
Yeah, I saw some big buttons. I was complaining that the ID4s were so tiny.
Yeah.
These were, from at least what we're saying, this was a European model that we saw.
Great point.
The US model will be even a little bigger.
Yep.
Little third row.
With a third row.
And a little more cargo room.
Absolutely.
Who's the demographic for that ID Buzz? Is it the adventurer, or is it the cool kind of parent? I just think of a cool minivan type alternative.
But you think about the people who put the Volkswagen bus on the map in the United States. They're probably not driving.
Right.
I don't even know if they're with us anymore.
Yes.
But I mean that kind of demographic is kind of long sailed. I mean the Volkswagen Beetle, the reincarnated, they used to call it the new Beetle.
Right.
That really never took hold.
Right.
So I think Volkswagen might be a little bit careful about dipping in to the vintage, the nostalgia bin too much, because it didn't really pan out for sales for the old Beetle. Now, but it still has a cool look to it and a vibe to it. So maybe the people that are going to buy it heard stories about Woodstock from their parents.
Yeah.
And there's enough, what he called, we were talking to the product manager, what he called Easter eggs that make it the big VW emblems and just little pieces. And I will say, I don't think the new Beetle did well. It was not a reliable car.
No.
And I think it tarnished its own fate
Right.
a bit, even more than the futuristic nostalgia.
Yeah.
Anyway, keeping with, again, string of EVs here, Subaru Solterra. Mike, give us some scoop on this one.
So this was built in conjunction with Toyota, the BZ4X,
right.
which you said you learned what that...
I learned that the BZ in the BZ4X is beyond zero.
Right.
Yes.
So and will be the first. The BZ4X will be a lot.
See,
the first of a number.
And
of
I just thought that was they were busy making EVs.
Ah, good.
So anyway, the Solterra, it's Subaru's first pure EV.
Right.
About 215 horsepower from the motor. All-wheel drive standard.
Yes.
They give you a little bit of ground clearance because Subaru's always doing the outdoorsy thing.
Right.
I mean, the new Outback Wilderness has even more ground clearance than the regular Outback. So they're really pushing that. About 222 miles with a full charge. Takes about 9 hours from a level 2 charger.
Yeah.
Again, Subaru is kind of late getting into the EVs like Toyota.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're talking about,
Cautiously,
Alex, you talked about General Motors building the Silverado from a whole new platform.
Yeah.
So EVs aren't really selling that well.
Right.
So you can almost understand the accountants, the brain trust at Subaru and Toyota saying, why don't we share the cost of this development?
Makes sense. It does.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So because they don't have any history of selling EVs.
Correct.
So you do this and we'll do that, and we'll put our money together and we'll see what happens.
I'm a little, I don't want to say concerned, but we'll see how it goes with them, with the Solterra and the BZ4X, because you mentioned 400 miles with that.
Right.
And that's a very premium vehicle. They're not all going to be that way, but
huge battery,
humongous battery, up to 200 kilowatt hours.
Right.
So that's crazy. But the lower end of the BZ4X and Solterra lineup, we're talking like 220 miles. So I'm just not.
Right.
Is that enough?
Is that enough? Is that going to? And realistically, the answer is likely yes for a lot of people, but so many people are concerned with range, and understandably so, but we'll see if it's enough to get them into their first EV. So
Solterra is a 2023 model, and not the first collaboration for Toyota and Subaru with the BRZ and 86.
I mean,
whatever.
Be still my heart. That's a rear-wheel drive manual
Yes,
transmission.
a little different.
doesn't get better than that.
Moving to Nissan now, the Ariya. Again, the first time I'm seeing the Ariya on the floor here. Now we're at 300-mile range, kind of rogue-sized. Alex, anything on the Ariya that kind of stood out?
Yeah, actually, you mentioned rogue size. I thought, again, one of these things where pictures just don't quite do things justice, so it does pay off to come to something like this. Smaller than I thought.
Yeah.
Rogue size, like you said, but shorter. A little bit shorter, more swoopy styling. It's actually looks pretty good in person, better. I wasn't so excited about it just from pictures, but in person I think it looks pretty good. And it's really targeting the heart of the market, both with EVs but also just in general. It's that compact two-row crossover, right?
I also think too that I'm a hatchback fan. I just think they offer so much. When you look at Bolt, Ioniq, Ariya, Solterra, you know, that this hatchback idea is very practical.
And I shot the video of the Ariya with Anatoly the Great. And one of the neat things of the interior, it has this motorized center console. I mean, a movable center console is not necessarily new, but it has this little electric motor.
You can send drinks back
it also
to
has
your
an
kids.
electronic, fold down little desk area too. And that in itself isn't so weird. But you wonder if it's an EV. And you're thinking you got to make all your battery juice last a long time. Why would you have extra electric accessories? I mean, I know it's not drawing very much.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
But all of those things could have been manual.
Maybe it's to draw people in.
Party trick.
Top trim
Easter
level,
egg,
and
whatever.
then lower trim levels, maybe not so much.
Yes.
But
Right.
it also had very interesting. There's like a wood trim on the dash, and buttons were like inlaid within underneath the wood. I don't know if you noticed that, but we'll see how that goes.
Very
A lot of interior details.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Alex, just to close out kind of the list here, you mentioned Vinfast. Again,
Vinfast, yeah.
new Vietnamese manufacturer. What did they show?
Yeah, so
Said these done cars.
right. So one concept, the VF7, which is the smallest one that they showed, still crossover kind of body style, but then they had a VF8, which is more of the compact two-row 5-seat crossover, and then also a VF9, which was a 3-row.
Yeah.
And both of these are fully electric. And that V8 or the VF8 again is really going after the ID4s, the Arias that we talked about just now, and it's starting at that $40,000 to $45,000 price point. So the vehicles they looked
legitimate.
Nice. It's just
we've seen this before. Kind of this new manufacturer, and it never quite materializes in this country, in this market. So it'll be interesting.
There are
to see.
more steps.
Yeah.
The car is there.
Right.
Let's see if they can make it to that finish line and start selling.
There was two concepts related to EVs that I heard. One was VinFast. This whole idea of this cabin of amenities that you're in this connected thing. You have your e-commerce. You have it syncing with your calendar at your voice. It's somehow synced with all your office, this interior office. That was one. Over-the-air updates, we've heard those before, but this idea of just a more holistic lifestyle, not just a vehicle.
It's more than a car.
And then the other cool one, which I know you loved, is this kind of, you pick your body style and you drop it onto your skateboard EV.
Oh, yeah.
They had a Ford F100 pickup, 1978, on an EV bed.
Awesome.
Right.
I think
really
of driving
cool.
the old Mustangs and how hard they are to drive. And I'm like, if I could just take how cool it looks and drop it on.
It's old and it's new.
Yes.
I really liked the Ford F100 with the Mach-E electrics. But there was also a Cobra.
Yes.
EV.
That's right.
So you had a classic Shelby Cobra, all electric powered.
Yeah.
They pump in V8 noises, which I think is a little corny.
Cool.
But I mean, cornier than my jokes. I mean, it must be hard for the car companies to have to come up with a lot of new stuff because they're going back to the old stuff. I mean, on the Ford display, they had an original Ford GT alongside the new Ford GT or the current Ford GT.
It's your futuristic nostalgia again.
Oh, right. And so it's like, well, those kind of maybe not necessarily our glory days. We're hoping we have more ahead of us. But we just need to remind you how great or how cool we were.
I mean, there was an entire stand called it was the Radwood area, which is a car show dedicated to 80s and 90s cars, which, I mean, I could have spent all day in there.
Your heart.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
Mark IV Supra, Skylines, and Hilux Surf from Japan, these 4Runners that are sold in other markets. Just really cool stuff.
Yeah, the Renault Turbo 2.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Rear engine, hatchback.
Oh, my gosh. Incredible.
You're easily pleased.
I'm such a car geek, I know, but that blew me away.
I think I would be remiss in not talking about this Earth theme of this show. Two ways. One, EVs. You're taking care of the Earth by getting an EV or embracing the EV concept for your next car. The other was this adventure type thing. To your point and your corny jokes, it was intense.
It was intense.
Because there was tents and off-road and nature vibe, and the whole Subaru display is like being in a forest.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And let's remind people we're in the middle of New York City.
Yes, and we're in the middle of New York. So not just saving the Earth with an EV, but embracing the Earth for your own pleasure and concepts.
Right.
And this whole earthy thing. It was very, very cool. And it was almost in every roof.
And they put the tents on the roofs. I mean, I saw at least 4 vehicles that had these. I mean, the Bronco and the Outback, you get that. They're kind of off-roading.
Right.
There's also a tent on top of the Sienna minivan.
There you go.
The Woodland edition.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
And to the names, Bison, Wilderness, Rock Creek.
Yeah.
I mean, they all just keep going. There was kayaks and campers and Tacozilla everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay, final question.
Okay, I'm ready.
Adventuring off the grid, taking in nature, the whole theme. Is it mutually exclusive to an AV? Did those two things go together?
That's a good question.
I was thinking, later thinking about it, like when you're off the grid like that, there's nowhere to charge. And there's a lot of amenities you can use, like the lightning advertised. Right. You can do your camp lights and run some music. There's nowhere to charge. Now you can fill up with gasoline and drive into the woods and take some gas along.
Well, right. I mean,
but you can't really do that.
For those of us that like to go off-road, with a Wrangler, they have the jerry cans that you can put, you can strap that under the rear tire to give you more range.
Yeah.
But out in the wilderness, you don't have more range with any. You can't just plug in somewhere.
I think there are pros and cons to both. Yeah, and to your point, you can bring fuel with you, and even if you didn't bring fuel, the likelihood of being able to go a little back more onto the grid and find a gas station, we're still at that point. Whereas you might not find the EV charger quite as easily, but having that silent EV powertrain out in the wilderness, it's kind of just adding to the lack of disruption that's there when maybe you're off-roading the 392 Wrangler, right?
Coming
it's a little
down.
more embracing the idea.
Yeah. Visceral, I think is the word. Well, we'd spent some time with the Wrangler 4E.
Yeah.
And we could, we mentioned how kind of cool it was. We could save your all-electric driving when you are off-road.
Yeah.
Right.
It was really cool.
You could
lower the
defer
windows,
a little
you
bit.
take the top off, you take the doors off or whatever,
Silent.
and you're just kind of creeping along in the forest, and the engine isn't running.
All you hear is the tire going over the rocks, and it's kind of peaceful.
Your likelihood of seeing wildlife just went up exponentially.
Yeah.
But your point about are we getting all of this getting off the grid and wildlife and all that stuff? In some ways, when you think about an EV and the car companies are really pushing this, is like what's friendlier on the environment.
Right.
So if we're going to drive
in some ways.
Right, it's looped together, but is it?
If we're going to drive EVs and not have as much carbon emissions, then we're going to have more environment
to enjoy.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it. So, and maybe the solar panel and some charging capability is the answer in the future. But that will do it for this episode. Love being with you guys. Love being out into the world at the New York Auto Show. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.